Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm Victoria Compton from the San Juan County Economic Development Council. We're a small local nonprofit created simply to help small businesses in whatever they need. And right now there's a lot of need, but if you do need anything, call us or email us. 360-378-2906 is our number. info@sanjuansedc.org is our email address, and it's San Juans with an S. We can help you with your PPP application, with unemployment issues, and point you to other people. We've got a SCORE counselor and other counselors who are ready and standing by to help everybody who needs it. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce Mark Costello, the Deputy Director of the Regional Office of the SBA, the Small Business Administration, and Desiree Albrecht, who is an Economic Development Specialist also with the SBA. Okay, thanks, Mark. I'm going to hand it to you.
Great, thanks, Victoria. Hey, I thought I might share my screen real quick, and I wanted to just show people where some information is accessible regarding SBA programs. Is that okay? Oh, I think you're muted. Okay, yeah. So I'm going to just do that just really quick. Let's see here. Oh gee, bear with me. I need to open the one of the windows. Okay. All right. Let's see. Here we go. Okay, hang on. Just a second, folks. I'm just trying to make the technology work here. Okay. Let's share my screen. Here we go. All right. There we go. So hey, as Victoria mentioned, I'm Mark Costello with the Small Business Administration Seattle District Office, and I wanted to just take a little bit of time today, first of all, to thank you for coming on the call. And I wanted to just provide an overview of a couple of the programs that the Small Business Administration has made available to assist small businesses that have been adversely impacted by the COVID-19 situation. So the first thing I wanted to do is just show people kind of what our website looks like and what you'll see if you were to follow up on this and go take a look at how we've got this laid out for folks. So if you just go to the SBA.gov site, and actually it's /coronavirus, it'll get you to this page, which the very first link on the page will take us to coronavirus funding options. And within that, the very first link is going to take us to the range of programs that have been arrayed for businesses through SBA. So I just wanted to kind of work off of this as a way to describe what is out there, and primarily I wanted to focus on what we call our Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, and then the program that has certainly been receiving the most notoriety of late is what we call the Paycheck Protection Program. Before I get into that, though, I just wanted to bring attention to one other program that is now available. So a little bit of background. This situation resulted in Congress authorizing and the president approving this CARES Act legislative package that probably most of you heard about. And it was a substantial funding of $2.3 trillion for a variety of different uses to support the country during this time of economic uncertainty. And within that package, significant amount of money was actually allocated to SBA to support small businesses, and primarily it was intended to support the Paycheck Protection Program that I'm going to talk about, but also there was money allocated for a couple of other things, and one of which is this one that probably isn't being talked about very much. It's over on the far right, the SBA Debt Relief Program. And actually what this is for anybody on the call that either has themselves or knows anybody that has received an SBA guaranteed loan, either through the 7A program or the 504 loan program. The idea behind this debt relief program is that as of payments due on March 27th of this year, SBA is actually making those payments on behalf of the small business. So for 6 months, SBA will be providing that debt service relief, if you will, to small businesses that either currently have an SBA guaranteed loan, or in fact, for those that have an SBA loan approved in the coming months, they're going to be able to kind of start out the process of servicing that debt with SBA actually making 6 consecutive payments at the outset of the amortization of that loan. So hopefully for those business owners that have SBA loans outstanding right now, this is something that you're going to see soon. You don't have to do anything to initiate this process. It's actually going to be triggered by activity between your lending institution and SBA. So I wanted to point that out. Additionally, I wanted, before we talk about the Paycheck Protection Program, I wanted to talk about this other tool that SBA rolled out. Probably it's been about a month ago. And what we did was we took a look at our existing SBA disaster loan platform and modified it a little bit so that it would encompass the idea of helping businesses impacted by a pandemic. So that was a legislative change that did in fact take place about a month ago. And ultimately what was set up and is currently available is what we call the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Unlike your sort of traditional or conventional SBA loans, which are usually guaranteed by SBA and made by lending institutions, these are loans that are actually made directly by the Small Business Administration to help businesses that have been impacted by the economic interruption resulting from the coronavirus situation. The idea here is businesses can actually access this program from a couple of clicks through the website, and you're actually going to get to an application site, and it is really quite a streamlined process through which you're going to have to answer a few different questions and provide some pretty rudimentary financial information. And once that application is transmitted, what will happen is you as an applicant will ultimately receive, as a result of the information that you provided, a loan offer from SBA. It's interesting because you're not actually applying for a particular loan amount. SBA is actually going to determine the amount for which you are qualified. And what that is actually going to be based on is, in general, an analysis of your monthly operating costs, including payroll, including any kind of lease expenses that you might incur, including overhead expenses as well. And once that figure is arrived at, it's actually going to be multiplied by 6 to come up with the applicable loan amount that you would actually qualify for. So what you're doing, in effect, is providing SBA with the ability to determine what you're going to need to keep your business in operation for the next 6 months. These loans can actually be for as much as $2 million. So certainly they can accommodate, a relatively large business with a lot of employees. At the same time, they're available to very small sole operator types of businesses as well. The idea with the financing, and for the most part, these are loans, is that it is going to be structured in a way so as to kind of minimize the debt service requirement. And so what I mean by that is there's going to be a fixed interest rate for businesses of 3.75%. The program is actually also available to nonprofit organizations, and that interest rate would be 2.75%. And the loans are going to be extended out for a considerable amount of time. The applicant is either going to be offered a 15 or a 30-year maturity on these loans. Additionally, the loans are going to be offered with what I would call a built-in automatic 12-month deferment feature. So once you get the money, the idea is that you're not going to have to make any payments on it for a year after receipt of funds. And then at that point, the idea is that you're going to amortize that loan over that extended period of time. Hopefully, that structure is going to provide some breathing room for businesses to kind of get relaunched, and then ultimately not be burdened with an excessive debt payment associated with this loan. You see on the screen, there's mention of a $10,000 advance. This is an interesting feature, although I don't know that it's the most compelling feature of the program. But the idea is that $10 billion out of that CARES Act legislative package was actually earmarked to support this up to $10,000 cash advance feature of the disaster loan. So the idea here is that depending on the number of employees in your firm, you could receive up to $10,000 in the form of what SBA is calling a quick cash advance. And the really, I think, interesting thing about this is, first of all, it is intended to be transmitted to the applicant more quickly than the total loan proceeds. And secondly, that the funds that are received do not have to be repaid. So it's an interesting prospect for people that are looking for funding to meet their immediate needs, as well as maybe out over the next several months. I think one of the nice things about this program is it's applicable a little bit more broadly to the funding needs of a business than the Paycheck Protection Program that I'm going to talk about here in a second. For example, you can use the funds to pay vendors, as well as those other kinds of operating costs that I mentioned. And also, I think it's important to know that the program is available at least through the end of December of this year. So if you're looking at options, trying to figure out what to do, there's absolutely nothing wrong and no cost associated with going in and making application for one of these loans. But suffice it to say that you don't necessarily have to do that immediately. I'm not sure, frankly, what the funding availability is behind the program, but I do know that the intent is that it has been it's in operation and available, as I said, through the end of the year. So a little bit farther out, a little bit longer term thinking. Ultimately, the idea of this program, as well as the Paycheck Protection Program that I'm going to talk about, is that what we're trying to do is give businesses a chance really bridge the gap between where they were before the beginning of the crisis and where they're going to be when things start to return to normalcy, and allow the businesses to maintain themselves, cover their costs, maintain their staffing levels, so that ultimately they're going to be able to relaunch at the time that it's appropriate to do so. And we'll have all their resources intact and be ready to kind of re-engage in earnest. So that's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. Again, up to $2 million, 3.75% for businesses, 2.75% for nonprofits, structured out over an extended period of time to cover operating costs over a 6-month period, expedited, streamlined, relatively painless application process. As far as the execution of the program so far, it hasn't been without some challenges. We understand that there have actually been millions of applications submitted. And as a result, I think some of the handling of the individual cases has been not as effective as we may have hoped, and that the timing of some of the disbursements and the approval decisions hasn't exactly been in line with what we were thinking. But I can tell you this, that at this point we are hearing of loan approval communications to people, to loan applicants, and we're hearing of disbursements of the cash advance into bank accounts. So I think that things are starting to happen with respect to the massive backlog or queue of applications that our Office of Disaster Assistance has been dealing with on this. And so I think that my hope anyway is based on that those folks that have been waiting for a number of weeks are going to see some promising outcomes in this program over the next couple of weeks. Stay tuned, but understand that the program is in existence and it will continue to be stood up at least through the end of this end of December of 2020. So I want to contrast that a little bit with the Paycheck Protection Program. As I said, both programs are really designed to help businesses sustain themselves and their operations for a period of time, at least until hopefully we get to a point where we can start to return to a little bit more of economic normalcy. So the Paycheck Protection Program has some different mechanisms than the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. First of all, the Small Business Administration is actually providing this product to small businesses via our network of participating lending institutions. So while the Economic Injury Disaster Loan is a direct loan from SBA, the Paycheck Protection Program is providing loans through a vast array and network of lending institutions. The idea with the Paycheck Protection Program, it's a little bit more compressed in terms of the time frame that it's looking to assist businesses through. Essentially what we're talking about here is 8 weeks. 8 weeks from the time of receipt of funds. The intent of the program is that it is going to cover payroll costs for small businesses during the 8 weeks after disbursement of loan proceeds. So to the question of, hey, how big can these loans be, or how do I determine the amount that I would qualify for? Paycheck Protection Program loans can actually be up to $10 million. And the method for determining an appropriate loan amount is, I'm going to use just a quick example. Essentially, it's 2.5 times the average payroll costs that a small business would be able to demonstrate. So the example that I would use is if you looked at a small business's 2019 financial information and look at their payroll costs and divide that by 12, you're going to come up with an average monthly payroll. From there, you're going to multiply that number by 2.5, and that's going to give you your actual applicable PPP or Paycheck Protection Program loan amount. So in an example that I've been throwing around, let's say that you're a small business with a number of employees and your average monthly payroll is $100,000. What you would be entitled to then under the PPP or Paycheck Protection Program is a loan for $250,000, 2.5 times average monthly payroll. So then you would say to yourself, okay, what happens when I get the money? So when you get the money, which hopefully is going to happen in an expedited fashion. In fact, we've told our lenders there might be some flexibility here, but as of right now, disbursements of the funds are supposed to occur within 10 days of approval of the loans. So once the money is dispersed, the idea is that this is to fund payroll over the next 8 weeks. Now, having said that, there is a little bit of cushion built into that calculation in that 2.5 months is a little longer than 8 weeks. So what that actually allows is a small business can also use up to 25% of the loan proceeds to cover other operating costs. So some of the similar expenditures that I mentioned under the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program can be covered under the Paycheck Protection Program. Routine overhead, rental payments on facilities or equipment, utility payments, even interest on existing fixed debt obligations can also be covered with Paycheck Protection Program proceeds. So what's the deal with the 75%? You know, what difference does it make if you use 75% for payroll or not? It makes a big difference. If you do meet that standard or that requirement, the debt in its entirety will be forgiven. So in other words, this is not essentially is not going to turn out to be a loan. Rather, it's going to be a grant. The intent behind this program really is the federal government stepping in, utilizing the banking system and the financial institutions that we work with to essentially funnel money to small businesses quickly, and with the express intent of allowing them to pay their people, with the express intent of allowing those small businesses to keep their staffs intact, whether they're working or not right now. And that's a question that very commonly comes up. But that's what the intent of this program is. In a lot of ways, it's an alternative, if you will, to unemployment. So if you think of it like that, it makes a little bit more sense when you ask the question, well, why would I bring my people back if they're not going to be working? It's okay. You can do that. That is contemplated in this program, and it's not going to be anything that's going to run afoul of the rules. Again, this program is intended to get money to small businesses to get to their employees, so their employees can continue to earn their wages, and that the entities themselves can remain in some form of completeness, so that at the end of the 8 weeks or whatever the time frame is, when we start to have a chance to re-engage economically, the businesses will be able to do so. People that have laid off employees will be expected to bring them back as a result of receiving these funds. So that's the essence of the program. The loans themselves are 100% guaranteed by SBA. So the lenders are serving a valuable function, but they're covered pretty well under the program. There are no fees associated with this program for the small businesses. trying to think of a couple of other important characteristics or features. Ultimately, at the beginning of the process, what you're going to do is provide the lender with documentation to support that average payroll calculation. At the end of the process, what you're going to do is provide the lender with documentation that you, as the business owner and loan applicant, did in fact use at least 75% of the loan proceeds for that payroll piece. And if you do accomplish that, again, you'll receive some kind of documentation indicating that the loan has been forgiven. One of the challenges that has sort of been out there for people, because this program was stood up very quickly and lenders were asked to create capacity to do these loans in a really expedited way. There were a lot of backlogs with a number of the local lenders, and so people maybe were having difficulty finding a lender that is in fact offering this loan program. I wanted to just talk a little bit about a strategy or a couple of options that people could consider to make sure that you are able to connect with a bank or a lending institution or a funding organization to allow you to get access to this financing. So typically what we would suggest to people is the same as under our regular 7A program. If you have a bank of account, that's a great place to start. If you don't have a bank of, I'm sorry, I want to back up. That's a great place to start. From there, find out if that lender is offering the Paycheck Protection Program. If they are, they're going to have a process typically online through which you can actually make application. A great tool out there to find out which lenders are actually participants in SBA's lending programs, and also ultimately to give you a sense of who's doing the Paycheck Protection Program, is that through this site, the SBA.gov coronavirus, you can actually get to a lender search tool. And you can put in your zip code, and it's going to give you a listing of the lenders that are actually SBA participating lending institutions. That'll give you, I think, a pretty good swath of options to reach out to if you don't have a bank of account that's doing the Paycheck Protection Program. Again, reach out to them online, find out what they're saying about the program, if they're offering it to non-bank customers, and if they are, that's potentially a great opportunity to connect with this program. I wanted to also point out that if that does not seem to be yielding good results for people, that approach, that there have been, interestingly, a number of other organizations that have stood up a program to deliver paycheck protection loans to small businesses. And some of these businesses are kind of in what they call the fintech space. So examples might be Cabbage with a K. Another one is PayPal. Another one is Square. There's an organization called Lendio that also, I believe, is facilitating Paycheck Protection Program loans. And I'm pretty confident that others are going to be providing this as well. Obviously, we want you guys to be comfortable with who you're dealing with, and you need to do your due diligence to confirm that these are legitimate organizations. But I would also say this, that this is unlike a conventional loan that might differ in terms of how it's delivered from lender to lender. All of the lenders and all of the organizations are governed by the exact same requirements here. Same interest rate, same no fee arrangement, all those different things. So it's really kind of a commodity situation, and really the key for you guys, I think, is ultimately to get you connected to somebody that's going to be willing to provide the funding for you. With that, Victoria, you know, I think what I kind of as a closeout comment, hopefully I've got some questions that I can answer, but I would suggest that folks, again, go to this SBA website. It's going to have the most accurate and updated information on both of these programs. With respect to the Paycheck Protection Program, we have seen substantial, really great participation from a number of the local lenders here in the state of Washington. And I'm confident that some of them are represented up in your area. Interesting information for people just to understand the impact and utilization of the program. As of maybe sometime in the afternoon yesterday, there were 257 billion in approvals already. As I think I mentioned earlier, the program itself provided funding of 349 billion. In the state of Washington, as of yesterday, there were about 18,000 some odd paycheck protection loans approved for about little over $5 billion. So this is a substantial, significant effort. And while some of the communication on it and some of the individual circumstances have perhaps been trying and challenging, it is, by all accounts, accomplishing the objective, as I said, of pushing out a lot of money very quickly via the systems that exist in our lending institutions, getting that money into the hands of small business owners who ultimately, in a lot of cases, are able to funnel it to their employees and keep their businesses intact until such time as things start to return to a little bit of a more normal set of circumstances and they can re-engage accordingly. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or anything that you might like me to expand on.
So Mark, this is Chris Reed. I'm the SCORE counselor up here in the islands, and so I have been connected, with the SBA office and Carrie.
Sure.
I've got a couple of tactical questions, really low-level questions. Maybe you might have a perspective on.
Sure.
One is on the PPP application, an applicant is required to represent that the current statement is accurate, that current economic uncertainty makes this loan request necessary to support the ongoing operations of the applicant. What criteria should one use in answering yes or no to that question?
Right. I think that there's probably a wide array of circumstances that would allow somebody to answer that in the affirmative, Chris. Obviously, if you look at the businesses that have been forced to close, that's pretty easy for somebody to make that statement. But I think there are going to be more subtle circumstances out there where perhaps there's simply been a reduction in revenues. Business might even continue to be, generating a profit, but who's to say what kind of impact ultimately that reduction in revenues is going to have on the business. So I think there needs to be some kind of tangible consideration that a business would look to. Another might be something like, a loss of some kind of a key supply chain relationship or a loss of a key customer or the diminished capacity of a key customer, even though that may not have materialized in the current financial information that the business has. I personally feel like a business owner could look to those kinds of issues and make that assertion and feel confident that they're being honest in this process.
So a very specific case, I think the answer would be yes, but I'm working with a business that has $300,000 in revenue, will lose my current forecast about $25,000, have a loss, go from profitability to loss.
Oh yeah.
About $25,000.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, even though they've got cash reserves to survive this, you think that you could still click yes to this?
Yes,
okay.
I do.
That's super.
I absolutely do.
Okay. My second question, last question is, No, the PPP has restrictions on the type of business entities that can apply, that the only nonprofits that can apply are 501c3s and C19s.
As of right now, yeah.
Is there news on that, or?
You know, and this is just me speaking as somebody who's watching the news or listening to the news, and kind of just as an average Joe, not even the guy from SBA, and certainly not a political person, but just I think as far as the landscape, what's out there on the horizon, clearly there's seems to be political will and intent to further fund the program. They've talked about $250 billion in additional funds. At the same time, though, there also seems to be some discussion of some additional maybe broadening of the availability of the program. I know, for example, I had heard something about at least somebody significant in the discussion had mentioned something about hospitals as a type of organization that should be brought into the discussion and possibly be made eligible for the program. So
what's the guide? So I get another organization I'm working with is registered as a nonprofit with the state, but files 1120 for-profit tax returns with the federal government and has not obtained nonprofit status. So what are they? What would be considered guiding there? The federal declaration or the state declaration, or something?
Well, I'd look to the federal, since it's a federal program.
Okay, so it's a non-stock for-profit, kind of an odd duck. So it doesn't. So I guess you have to click the other button in the application for that situation, or.
You know, I suppose, Chris, it probably depends on what. I'm not quite sure what all those different interfaces are looking like that people are seeing on the lender websites. But you know, I sometimes I think what happens is you kind of have to do the best you can to get through it. So yeah, if the other gets somebody past that, I think that's fine.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You bet.
There's a question in chat asking, the person asks, can we apply for both the PPP and EIDL loans or just one?
That is a super question. Thank you for asking. You can apply for both. A lot of people applied for the EIDL loan when it became available, and that was prior to the enactment of the PPP. So we currently have that going on, where folks have either made application for, waiting for an approval on an EIDL loan, but they're also in the process of a PPP application. So the idea is that if you do get an EIDL approval, that can actually be rolled into the PPP. In other words, it can be refinanced with the PPP. And the benefit there is that basically, as I kind of described, you'd be taking some money that would actually require repayment, and you'd be replacing it with money that is going to be forgivable debt. So, and there may be cases where the approval of the EIDL has not been received yet. And then the PPP is approved. I think the key there is to communicate that to your lender, because it will impact to a certain extent possibly the amount of forgiveness that you'd be entitled to under the PPP loan.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and just open up the room and unmute all for everybody in case there's other questions in the room. So I'm unmuting you. If you want to remute, mute yourself from there. Okay. Any questions? Steve Hushabek, do you want to go ahead and bring up your question?
Yeah, a lot of the concerns that I've heard from some of the small businesses in our community which are very seasonality oriented, is that the PPP application, in some cases is just a fixed point in time versus addressing the fact that during the summer months, I have many employees and that season is coming up very quickly. And during the winter months, I have very few employees, if any. How do they address that in their PPP applications?
Hey, Steve, I might take a little bit of ask for a little bit of forbearance on that. I know that there is some guidance in some of the materials that we've seen. I'm not remembering specifically, but I know it spoke to seasonal businesses and an approach, I believe, that could be used to account for that. So maybe Victoria, if you would let me research that, and then I can get that answer out to you if you could pass it on to the group.
Absolutely.
I don't have it off the top of my head, and I don't want to sort of try to make it up because it's too specific, and I don't want to give you bad information. So
We'll put it on our Facebook feed. Just send
Okay.
it to Mark. Thank you.
okay,
Thank you for addressing it.
you bet.
Any other questions in the room?
I know there were questions floating around the community about the ag businesses, and maybe this would be a good time to address that too, about which programs would be applicable for ag businesses.
Great. Thanks, Mickey.
Yeah. Now I understand, and this is another one that I might follow up on, Victoria. But I understand that there is ability for certain ag businesses to qualify for both programs. And I think it's sort of the distinction between maybe large farming operations versus some of the more localized growers of different things. And I believe that the growers would in fact qualify for both programs.
Fantastic. Thank you, Mark.
Sure.
Any other questions? Okay. If there,
I have a question. This is Tara.
oh yeah,
I'm wondering if we're aware of anyone in our community that's actually received any relief yet.
I've heard of one, and one that got, and I've heard lots of people saying getting emails that saying that they're in process.
I've heard of 3, Victoria.
Do we know what institutions those ones that are hearing back have worked with?
Chris?
I know one was Key, and I think one was Banners, but I'm not absolutely sure. I don't know the third.
I'll throw out another.
No, I'm sorry. I'm wrong. One was the EIDL, and one was I think Key.
Victoria, I wanted to mention one other state headquartered lender that has from the beginning been able to take on applications from a variety of people, including those that are not their own regular customers. It's Washington Federal.
Yes.
Another one that has had a significant amount of approvals, and I believe has taken the same position, is Washington Trust Bank.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah.
We've actually got a guy on the call who worked with WAFED and was really happy.
Oh, fantastic.
Great, thank you. And then, okay, good. Any other questions?
I've left them speechless.
Victoria, this is
It's good.
Deborah. I have a
Oh, yeah,
question.
hi.
This is Tracy with NJ. If you have applied through a lender, can you take that and switch to Washington Federal? My lender's not been really responsive here.
You know, that is a super question. I think people absolutely have the option of going with the lender that responds to them first. And I think given the environment that we're in, there are probably countless cases of people having made application to numerous lenders. And so absolutely, if you've got somebody else in mind, e.g., for example, Washington Federal, great, give it a shot and see what their process is, see if they're able to turn that around quicker. And ultimately, you don't have to take the loan from the other institution.
Thank you.
Sure. Great question.
There was another question before too, right? Deborah, was that you?
Yeah, Victoria, this is Deborah from the Visitors Bureau, and I just wanted to add, and I'm sorry I might have missed Mark's comments on it, but about the PPPs, just FYI, if you happen to be a 501c6, they're really working hard to get those also accepted in the PPP process. I replied to a couple of calls to action regarding Congress from the U.S. Travel Association. And I have a feeling the chambers and other, nonprofits are really working hard on that too.
Absolutely. Any membership, a 501c6 is a membership organization. So just think about all those political membership organizations and other folks with lobbyists who are working on that on our behalf.
And I think, Victoria, there's actually more availability under the EIDL program, the disaster loan program, for different types.
Yes.
It's not as restrictive in terms of nonprofits. So that would be something that for folks to just take a look at.
Yes. Well, and frankly, because I just wanted to we have a 501c6 for the EDC. I went ahead and applied and clicked other with the hope and pretty much guarantee that it ultimately will open up.
Yeah.
I guess it's really a hope at this point, but.
Keep our fingers crossed, right?
Exactly, and our toes, and all of our pets' various toes and claws and things. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Well, hearing none, thank you everybody for coming today. As I said, SBA.gov for more information on the SBA's programs. Mark will send us answers to a couple of those questions, and we will put them up on the EDC's Facebook page and also in our weekly newsletters and things. And if you need anything from us, it's sanjuansedc.org. Just send us an email or give us a call from that site. And thank you everybody for coming today, and hang in there. We know things are really, really, really hard right now, and we want to do whatever we can to help you. So thanks for coming today. And thank you, Mark, so much for coming today and speaking for us.
Thanks, Victoria.
Noticed is also here from your staff. So thank you both for coming, and Mark, thanks for the information.
Okay, my pleasure. Take care, you guys.
Take care, everybody.
Okay,
Thanks.
bye-bye.